This is Nic Olsen from Son of Old, and you're watching Concerts That Made Us.
Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The show is about to begin.
Welcome to the podcast, concerts that made us, interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down, the greatest live shows and that cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concertsthatmadeus.com.
Nick, you're very welcome to the Concerts That Made Us.
Thank you for having me.
It's great now. I'm looking forward to diving into your music over the next bit. Now, you've just released the album Echoes from a Silent Hill. It's been described as deeply personal and musically rich. Can you take us deeper into it if you can?
Yeah, I suppose it's a personal record in that, well, all music is, but that particular album, I was in Cape Town, and I was moving back to Germany, which was kind of forced circumstances. And it was a very difficult kind of transition into, kind of accepting a new reality and trying to work around things. And I had all these songs that I'd been writing in Cape Town that I planned to record at one point, but then I just decided to get hold of this producer that I've worked with before, and get into the studio and just do the record. And it was all done like while everything was happening. So I literally finished the record and not even, a week later I was gone.
Man.
Yeah. So it was kind of a kind of an intense time. I've immigrated before, and I'm married to a German, so I know the deal and the difficulties of traveling and living in different places. But yeah, it was a kind of an intense time.
Yeah,
The record, yeah.
Did that take away from the record maybe? I know, it sounds like your focus wasn't fully on the record when you have so much going on.
No, we focused on the album. We just buried ourselves and existed only in the studio, so I would have to deal with certain things, of course, but not during the recording days. We had a thing at the time, I don't know how much it's still a problem in South Africa, where the lights are switched off at quite a regular basis, and that caused problems with studio time, so we'd have to work around that. So, the songs I had already written, so it was just about creating the sounds in the studio and making creative calls and tracking everything.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And am I right in saying the producer you're speaking about was Theo Crous?
Yeah. Theo Crous.
Sorry, Crous.
No worries. He's a well-known South African producer. I mean, he's worked with artists local and abroad, and he's done some cool things, and he's got a fantastic studio, and he really knows what he's doing.
Yeah, you're definitely in good hands. So
Yeah. So it was a pleasure working with him, and I recorded some of my first recordings with him actually, when I was 18 years old or 19 years old. So, and then I recorded with him in 2008, and then again now. So we've got a long relationship. We've known each other during the various phases of our lives, and so there's a very close bond there, which is very cool.
I like it. I like it. Something else I want to speak about, which I'm sure you're probably sick of being asked about, is you also have Foo Fighters' Rami Jaffee on the album. How did
Yes.
that come about, and what was it like working with him?
Well, I didn't really work with him in that I didn't sit in the room with him and describe what we wanted. We did we had ideas of what we wanted him to do. The reason why he's on the record is because Theo's good friends with him. They connected through, I think it was initially through a tour the Foo Fighters were doing in South Africa. And Theo looked after them for a day and rode motorbikes with Rami and Dave, and got to know them quite well, and then the relationship continued. And Theo's like, if he's looking for those like mellotron sounds, different types of effects, and those real old vintage key sounds, Rami is a master of that. He's kind of that's his thing. So he's played on a lot of different records of different people, I'm sure, over the years, and yeah, he's kind of the go-to guy in that department. And so Theo sent him a little brief, sent him the tracks. He tracked it in his studio and then sent it back, and then we put it together. I got to meet Rami though in Copenhagen, which was cool. Um, so I've got to know him a little bit. We didn't have much time because they were playing a show that night. So yeah, I look forward to maybe spending more time with him in future. But a very knowledgeable guy who's got just a wealth of musical knowledge and experience. And those type of people are very valuable.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah.
When it came to the recording and production side yourself, is there any kind of memorable moments that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose doing the vocals was great, and I mean, yeah, I mean, it was just Theo and I in the studio, the two of us, and we were just buzzing off the whole creative process. It was it's hard to explain, but it was just the things came out so quick. We did that album so quickly, and everything flowed. Yeah. I mean, memorable moments. I mean, we just spent a lot of time laughing, smoking far too many cigarettes, and enjoying, recording a kind of handmade rock and roll album.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
Is there any specific tracks on the record that you kind of gravitate more towards?
I like the song Sticks and Stones. I think it's quite cool. I think it's got a bit of a feeling of the Viagra Boys on there. It's got that attitude, I think, which I really like, and a bit of Beck style. And then the song Solo, which is out for a while now, that's been pretty well received, and that's a very special track, I think. Um, yeah, they all have their own kind of flavor, but I think those are probably my two favorites on the record.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned you moved to Germany. From a musical point of view, how does Germany compare to South Africa?
Well, I mean, it's the third largest market in the world, so that's big business, big money. South Africa doesn't have the same size economy and stuff, but South African artists and the South African music scene, I think, is across the board, whatever genre. People are pretty committed to what they do because of the circumstances within which they work. And so I think people take, when they do music and they do it, they put everything in. And I know more career musicians in South Africa than I do here. Not that there aren't career musicians here. I'm just I don't know, maybe that's my South Africa connection, but I know people that have done quite a lot of stuff and played in bands here, of course. Yeah, so it's a different scene. It's different altogether. The people in Germany are, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, well, the amount of people here, there's not that much great stuff in my opinion.
Right.
But I think it comes along with having it's not comfortable for everyone. I know everyone has troubles and whatever, the world is changing, but I mean, it's a pretty different society to living in South Africa, and I think creatively, it comes out, and I think sometimes having a bit of a rough time helps the music a bit. Maybe it's all too comfortable. Yeah. People have lots of expensive equipment and stuff. Yeah. I mean, look, but on the other hand, I mean, geez, the music now, I'm talking from a perspective of someone who's 44 years old. There's everyone and their uncle has got a guitar and a recording device and tracks music, and there's certainly lots of talented people out there, but it's a different scene. It's a lot more cutthroat, I would imagine, maybe. I used to be a bit involved in it, in Munich. I had an indie label here. I did a record with Steve Albini in 2011 and was playing in scene here a bit. And it was very, very cool, but it's changed. It's changed a lot now, everything. And I haven't really found my feet, to be totally honest, in Germany, musically.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, is there much of a scene for kind of rock singer songwritery stuff? Because it's not exactly the first thing you think of when you think of Germany.
Yeah, there is. And I think there's some German songwriters. I think German music, they put a lot more emphasis, I find, generally on lyrics. And so of course there's that connection and nuances with the language, and I think that means a lot to the audiences here. Whereas in English often it's a lot more abstract and up to interpretation. You know, unless you're, I don't know, there's some artists that I suppose are pretty blatant, but yeah, and there's definitely a scene here, but I suppose, but it's the same, it's the same type of industry, the same type of struggles, the same type of stories you hear about music and what it means to make music these days that you hear everywhere. That's kind of universal. And I found the genres have broken down. I mean, you've listened to the algorithms. I don't know if I can swear on this podcast,
No,
but
you can't work away.
they've really fucked it up. Can I drink as well?
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. As well, for anyone not aware, you have a long history in the South African music scene. You were the frontman of the award-winning rock band Perez. Then you launched your solo career in 2008. You took a break, and then you came back to it in 2020. After so long in the industry, what drives you these days compared to when you started out?
Um, I think what drives me these days is to realizing that music for me is part of my existence, and if I don't do it, it's a problem on many levels. When I was young, I was motivated to become in a popular band and do well and have success, and when you're in your 20s, you're driven by all sorts of things, other things. But now I'm just trying to find a way to sustain something so that it's just to have a voice in music, to put out records and to find people that connect with the sound. Um, when I realize that there's nothing of that, then maybe I won't be investing so much effort in it, I suppose, but I will always do it. So it's kind of more of a spiritual thing now, I suppose. But the thing that's connected those two areas is that when I do an album, I take it seriously. I don't do it with the intention of, oh, I just need to be creative and put something out there, and that's enough for me. I'm a fan of music, and I don't want to put out music that I don't think's worthwhile sending to people to listen to. If it's just, yeah. So yeah, the motivation has kind of changed. I suppose the bar is set differently to what it was when I was younger, and naturally my audience is older because music has changed. I don't play I don't play the type of music that people are into now, I suppose, very much. And it's a bit of a challenge now, kind of not a challenge, but I suppose classic rock is defined, or certain sounds are defined, and and people harp back on that. People don't continue creating like old school sounding records, because I was kind of inspired by Pink Floyd a bit on this album, as well, and just some of their sounds and their feeling and those old sounds, and yeah, it was different. Sorry, it's a long-winded answer.
No, I like it. I like it. It's a good one. It's a good one. Now, the podcast is called Concerts That Made Us, so I have to ask you some concert related questions.
Yes.
First off, as a concert goer, what concerts would you say have made you?
Um. Jeez. What really impressed me, what really blew me away, I think, was seeing Tori Amos play at Roskilde Festival in 1998. Um, yeah, she was fantastic, and Dr. John played that same year as well, the pianist, singer, or the late singer. Um, that had a big impact on me. Those are concerts I actually attended,
Mhm.
In South Africa, often we were watching, at that time, there weren't many bands coming across. So you would see local bands and local acts. So a lot of the local bands in South Africa, of course, really motivated me. I remember seeing the band, they're called the Springbok Nude Girls, which was Theo's band. They're kind of a cult rock band, you could say.
I've actually had them
Um,
on before. I've had
yeah,
Arno on before, yeah.
yeah. So they really like they're kind of I think they're about 10 because Theo's of slightly older generation, like 10 years older. So yeah, that band had a big influence in watching them play live. There was a band called Boo in the old days that was kind of as well. They were kind of a three-piece band, and the singer was a bass player, and he had his little microphone here, and he made weird noises. But they were such a tight-knit conceptual outfit that was a very big inspiration. Um, and then quite recently, and it's kind of pretty weird, but I think one of the most inspiring concerts I've seen of late would be AC/DC at Nuremberg, in Nuremberg. I was in the Golden Circle for that. And I never grew up really being a huge AC/DC fan, but of course the music is, I know it and I appreciate it very much. But it was just so amazing to see these people play this music with so much power
Hmm.
at the age that they were in, and that really gave me like sounds ridiculous, I know, and cheesy, but I was like, yeah, these guys are still doing it. I mean, granted, they're making a lot of money and everything out of their music, and they probably have like blood infusions every day or some shit to keep them going. Things that I don't have. I have Polana beer, and trying to keep my stomach waistline, from going out of control. That's my biggest concern these days. But nevertheless, it was just that you could see that they were really into it. It was really cool. And then, of course, I saw the Foo Fighters on the side of the stage at Roskilde recently at their last tour, when I met Rami, and that was kind of like a closing experience in a weird way. I had my cousin with me who had attended every single Roskilde festival,
Hmm.
and he's getting older now, of course, and he was like, oh, this will be the last festival. But we both were standing on the main stage, on the side stage with the main act, enjoying the gig. And he says, you're not going to beat that festival experience like that. So it was just so yeah, that was super cool. But yeah, that was more of a reflection than something that made me, I would say.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. Some good
Yeah.
ones there. Good ones.
Yeah.
Now, for any listeners that haven't been lucky enough to catch one of your shows, what are they like? Give us the full experience if you can.
So it varies. Sometimes I play on acoustic guitar and vocals and it's just myself. And then I kind of experiment a little bit with sounds and building a wall of sound with an acoustic guitar and then supporting the music with that. And that's kind of its own thing. I find it's the easiest way to communicate the songs, is to strip it all down. And then, yeah, I mean, with band stuff, I kind of aim to, it's kind of sounds like on the record, I'm not a very, like flashy performer. Um, but I just want to be sincere when I perform. That's the most important thing. Um, and so I think when I perform, I don't make people feel uncomfortable.
That's a good thing.
And someone says, come watch my gig, and you go there and you're like, fucking hell. And then you have to say something at the end of it. Yeah. Yeah, it's not like it's a comfortable, cozy environment. That's what I always like. And that's kind of what my concerts are like. That's kind of the feeling I like to put across. Yeah.
Sounds like a good time. Good time. At
Yeah.
least you're not uncomfortable. And if you think of all the gigs that you've played over your entire career, is there one that sits above the rest? It just couldn't have got any better.
Um, yeah, I played a gig in a venue in Munich, around 2011, 10, 11. in a hall called the Mufatala. And it was a fantastic gig because the drummer I was working with at the time, we had been playing so much together, and we'd come back from Chicago from recording with the late Steve Albini. And uh we were opening up for a band that was one of these. It was their gig, so it was sold out show, and they were obviously very popular. But I didn't know much about them. But they had like a very big setup. Synths and fucking wind section and guitars and beards and all sorts of shit. And I have a beard, but anyway. But we kind of got there as a two-piece. It was a two-piece band, and we set up on the stage, and we of course had to set up our drum kit separately and quickly get it all, on and off the stage as quick as we could. But I had this massive stack amp, and the sound was fantastic, and it was just pure raw power that came across. And yeah, that gig it was the last gig we would play together, actually, because I would move back to South Africa and he moved to California to played in a band called Obliterations, and I think they're called the Pink Mountain Tops is the name of the band. I might be wrong, but anyway, he had some gigs in California and he moved away, and yeah, that was something that really stood out. And then when I was in Perez, we played a Splashy Fen, which is an old festival in KwaZulu-Natal. It's in the Drakensberg, which is a lot of green rolling hills and very kind of farm-like. It's in the mountains, and as well there's mountains there. It's really beautiful. And that was our first gig as Perez, and we actually got signed that night straight away. The guy who became our manager and label and did everything for us, and he did a lot in South Africa. He basically went up to us, said, "You're not talking to anyone else. It's done. You're with us." And he gave us salaries, got us a house in Johannesburg, moved us up there. And yeah, and that gig we worked on for such a long time. It was like we were going to come on with a bang, and it was a headline slot, which we could wangle our way into because we had been in the music scene. And we were pretty, we were pretty fucked when we played, but in a good way. Like, we could play. It wasn't like that, but it was special. It was surreal. Yeah. Yeah. So those are the two concerts I'd say that stick with me.
I like it. I'm not surprised to stick with you. Here's a bit of a fun one. If we flip that around, the worst gig you've played, everything went wrong, and how did you overcome it?
The worst gig I played was with Perez. It was after our second album, and I had been approached by a band called the Parlotones to join them, because I was kind of primarily the songwriter in Perez, and everyone knew me as a strong songwriter, or at least that's what they thought. So they hired me, but we still had some gigs going, and we had to finish off a Perez gig, and we'd done an album with Theo, actually, and the first album we did took off big time. This album had I think it's the better album, but and I think a lot of music listeners would agree, but it was just a different time. We were playing rock and roll music that they weren't ready for in South Africa. I felt at that point it would have done very well, much better in Europe and other places, but so there was a lot of the backstory is there was a lot of belief in it, and then it didn't work, and it was just, and I had been then asked to join this band, and then the Parlotones was on the same label as what Perez was on, and it was just it was a bit of a weird one. And I arrived at the gig, and the bass player was on another planet, like nowhere. He was fucking nowhere. That's as much as I can say. And that it was very clear he was nowhere. And we were all just like, fuck it, let's just play, it'll be fun. And he got on stage, and we were all eventually, it was a very surreal experience. And he couldn't plug in his guitar, his bass guitar. And when he did eventually get it in, and the drummer started playing, he started playing a different song to what we were playing. And when I mean different timing, different fucking key, like completely fucking different. And we had all these hardcore Perez fans that were there that could just see that they were witnessing something special. They were witnessing a band like coming completely out at the seams. It was just like, and yeah, I mean, the drummer that we had, and he's a fantastic drummer. He didn't talk to us, like he didn't speak to us again for like months. It was like, it was done. It was just yeah, and that was the worst gig. Yeah. Bad gigs come with those type of stories, you know. She's you see it happening with, I don't know, Jane's Addiction recently with little fight on stage. It's like, it looks so comical when you're the viewer and you think, God, but you know, it's another side when you're on that edge of the fence and you're in this little world and everyone's looking in at it, and suddenly you know, the problems in that world or the difficulties are just exposed fucking clear for everyone to witness.
Oh man, oh man.
Yeah.
With so many years past then, what are the hopes or chances of Perez reuniting even for a one-off gig?
Well, you know, I'm planning to tour South Africa next year, and we kind of, Matt, the singer, I'm also close with the other guys, but you know, with Adam, the bass player as well, but particularly Matt. And it was the thing that made Perez special was we had two vocals, and Matt has a bit of a more of a kind of husky voice. He's like your singer's singer. I have a slightly different voice, although it's changed a little bit now that I got older. And that was the special thing. So we played like a reunion show, like one or two gigs. We played some festivals 2 years ago, I think it was. And then I'm going to go back and tour. And Matt was like, okay, cool, let's hook this up. And he's going to play for me and sing and backing vocals and stuff and play guitar with these for this album. He's the biggest fan of this record. He says like he's a huge fan of it. So we were kind of mooting the idea of, you know, perhaps doing like a pocket band, Perez pocket band type thing, and actually play some of the songs. We did plan to do a record at one stage, but it was just everyone is in different places, and you know, I also put a lot of effort and time to write music, and I want to be able to I don't want it to be just written and put out there and that's it. You know, like I said, even with this record, you know, I do it with the intention of trying to grow and build a bit of a fan base. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Now, before we dive into the last couple of questions, then we just heard about the tour in South Africa. Is there any other future plans you can tell us about? Maybe a next album or gigs that are closer?
Yeah, I'm going to be playing a little bit around here, definitely. Of course, I'd love to come to Ireland, and I think that I would make an effort to do that. I just need to probably just start to do some more research into how that's possible. Particularly because I live here, and it's a EU, you know, it's part of the EU, and it's English speaking. That's really important, you know. I think
helps.
It does help. And on Spotify, it seems, you know, you can kind of break down where I have quite a lot of listeners in Ireland, I'd say. So yeah, that's something that's on the cards. Australia as well. I'd like to go and play in Australia. And Adam, the bass player from Perez, we're talking about lining up a tour that side, and then I just pull musicians in over there. So Adam would play bass or with me, and then just like Matt will play when I go to South Africa, and then just get local musicians. So it's more cost effective, I suppose. I don't really have a band as such. So it'll be Australia, Germany, South Africa, and then Ireland. And I'm not just saying this because of this podcast, but it was something I've been looking into. Because I'm looking for places where I think the music will resonate in particular, you know, and I feel that it would work there, you know.
Yeah.
The UK is completely out the fucking question, to be totally honest.
Right.
Just because of Brexit and the missions of that, and it's just, I mean, there's artists that are actually doing well that even here and there that don't come across because it's just absolutely impossible financially.
Yeah. That's actually, I feel like in my last 4 or 5 interviews, Brexit has come up, you know, and everyone it's a killer. Like, it just shut off so many doors for music.
Yeah, I mean, there was a band called the Wave Pictures that used to tour Europe a lot. We toured with them as Son of Old in an old Constellation, like 2000. I don't know when that was, in the 2000s, and they still tour a lot in the UK. And they come to Spain, but they don't come to Germany. I think the whole endeavor is just, I think, yeah, concerts are under threat, and indie concerts are under threat, and a lot of people that are into the, kind of smaller gig venues, so an older crowd, and I would say older, I mean 35 and above. A lot of people aren't used to this idea that you have to pre-sale tickets for a fucking pub gig, I mean,
Yeah.
and then they want so many pre-sales, and so for traveling bands at least, whereas like in the old days when I lived here, or in the 2000s, it was, you know, you saw that was on the list, and you'll go, cool, that's he's playing tonight. You make the call right there and then, and you go to the gig, and gigs were full, and there were no pre-sales. And I think that's all changed, and that's because of yeah, I think it's kind of the way these ticket selling institutions have hijacked the small venues. So it's fucked it up big time. So I'm kind of like looking to play. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I'll probably, look, it's not my problem. I'm not big enough to be concerned too much about that now. But yeah, there's a cool venue here called Substance in Munich, which is I'm going to go and play it. Which there's a lot of pretty historical venues here, and my wife saw Pearl Jam there before 10 came out, just before 10 came out in front of
Oh
30
man.
people. Nirvana played there, Sonic Youth played there. All sorts of bands from over the years have played this venue, and the stage is still there, and it's all original. Now I think the music has to stop at 10:30 or something, which is kind of fucking weird. Um, but uh, but I'm going to play some gigs at those places, and kind of, yeah, it sounded kind of, and then some festivals next year as well. Yeah,
Nice, nice. We're going to be
yeah,
busy, so we'll dive into the last couple of questions. There are a couple of random fun ones.
yeah.
First off, besides music, what are you currently obsessed with?
Um, should I? I'm not really obsessed with anything, eh? I'm obsessed with trying to not like drink myself to death.
Right. It's a good obsession.
No, 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 no. I'm obsessed. Yeah, no, that's not bad. I'm not quite there yet. But yeah, I work a hell of a lot as a tour guide here to fund everything. So I do like I'm not, so I'm obsessed, I suppose it seems, with with fucking Third Reich history, because I work in that field, and from a tour perspective. So
Right.
yeah, I wouldn't say it's not a passion, but it's something that I'm kind of into quite a lot, I would say.
Hmm.
Yeah, history.
I said that's actually very interesting, being over there and needing to know all that stuff and looking into it. I feel
Yeah.
like I'd actually get lost looking into that. I'd be so engrossed wanting to find out more and
Yeah, no,
more,
no,
you
it
know?
it, it is. I mean, it is interesting, and I've got much more into it than I was when I did it when I was younger. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. The next one, it's a bit odd. If you had to spend 24 hours locked in a room with any musician from history, who would it be?
Um, Jeez. It would be. I think it would be David Bowie.
Right. I like it. I like it. What would you hope to learn from David Bowie?
Well, there's a lot of other musicians that I really look up to that I'd love to see, but David Bowie just seems to be such he's a type of guy you'd want to talk to. He's got so
Hmm.
much wisdom on so many levels. Not just from his music side. So if I'm locked in a room with someone, I wouldn't want to be locked in a room with Paul McCartney. You know? Yeah, John Lennon. You'd feel like you'd land up. It would just be uncomfortable
Hmm.
at some point, because he would start getting really pissed off. And David Bowie, I imagine, would be the type of guy that would have said, um, okay, this is a situation. Let's make the most of it. And what's going
Yeah.
on? Let's talk or something.
Yeah.
It would be. I
Yeah.
would feel safe with Bowie.
Right. I like it. I like it. And the final question, so what's your go-to album? An album you constantly go back to?
God. Jeez. An album I constantly go back to, and God, you must have heard this so much. So just you can roll your eyes. Is OK Computer, Radiohead.
Okay.
It's just yeah, something that I can go back to and listen to from beginning and end and be taken away. It's a great record. Yeah, I like some of their later stuff, of course, as well, but that one is just I don't know, it's quite outstanding. I think when they played that show when they were like really happening with that record, they were playing in London or something, and everyone was there. The who's who from music history was there to watch them perform this record. I think it was and something that happened in my kind of my musical lifetime. So yeah, that's a record I go back to.
I like it. I like it. Listen, Nick, this was really fun. Now. Thanks a million.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Welcome to the podcast, concerts that made us, interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down. The greatest live shows and the cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concerts that made us.com.